Welcome to today's explainer. Okay, to start things off, I want you to step into a completely new role. Imagine, right now, you are a lead robotics engineer. And your current project? Well, it's quite possibly the most ambitious in human history. You've been tasked with solving the global loneliness epidemic using advanced synthetic companionship. Basically, we aren't building factory arms today, we are building a friend. But as we're going to see, engineering a robot that actual humans want to hang out with is incredibly complex. It requires us to debug not just the hardware and the software, but the deeply ingrained psychology of the human brain itself.
Okay, let's dive right into this, because this reaction perfectly captures the terrifying core bug we are trying to fix today. That was a real reaction from someone looking at the current state-of-the-art in hyper-realistic robots. Seriously, you have to ask yourself, why is it that when we spend literal millions of dollars trying to make a machine look exactly like us, the result just creeps people out? Why does it feel like a cursed horror movie doll instead of a friendly companion?
So here is our engineering roadmap for today. 1. The robot friendship blueprint. 2. Hitting the uncanny valley. 3. Debugging the social lag. 4. The stylized design alternative. And 5. The future of social bots.
All right, Section 1, the Robot Friendship Blueprint. Let's kick off Phase 1 of our sprint and look at the highly ambitious hardware currently trying to replicate human interaction.
I mean, just think about the intense hardware specs required here. Take the RealBotics full-body model, which goes for around $125,000. To even try to recreate human expression, they have to pack 43 total motors into this machine, and 17 of those are dedicated just to the face and neck alone, so it can physically smile or frown. It's got AI cameras right in the eyeballs for gaze tracking, and some seriously custom conversational memory software. Like, if you tell this bot your favorite snack is peach starbursts, or that you've inexplicably watched Frozen 2 exactly 37 times, it will remember that and bring it up later like a slightly overcommitted best friend.
And engineers are actively layering a personality right on top of all that hardware. They've built in humor, with the robot actually joking that it only scares investors. The AI is even sophisticated enough to offer a surprisingly nuanced relationship advice, like suggesting you go yell into a pillow rather than at your spouse when you're angry. Pretty good advice, right? But despite this super clever programming, there is a massive physical design flaw that completely shatters the illusion.
Which brings us to Section 2, hitting the uncanny valley. Let's diagnose the psychological wall our hyper-realistic hardware keeps crashing into.
And this brilliantly illustrates the core issue. We're talking about Masahiro Mori's 1970 theory of the uncanny valley. As an engineer building a social robot, this is hands down your biggest enemy. Think about it like this: a purely mechanical, utilitarian robotic arm in a car factory. It feels totally neutral to us. But a slightly glitchy animatronic character at a theme park that's trying to smile at you, yeah, that feels eerie. Mori basically argued that as an object becomes more human-like, our empathy toward it actually increases, but only up to a certain point. Right before it hits 100% human realism, there's a steep drop-off, a valley. In this zone, the robot is almost human, but tiny, microscopic imperfections, like a slightly stiff silicone cheek, eyes that don't dart quite right, or veins painted on by hand with red yarn, they stand out violently to the human brain. Instead of warmth, our brains register something that looks human but fundamentally isn't, and that triggers a deeply unsettling feeling.
So consider the two sides of this valley. On one end, we have stylized robots. Think of characters like WALL-E. Because they are clearly stylized machines, our brains don't expect them to act like perfect, flawless humans. So we find them cute and endearing. But on the flip side, when engineers push for pure human realism, it completely backfires. We expect perfect human-like morphologies to deliver perfect human behavior, and when they fall even a tiny bit short, they just feel creepy, like they're trying way too hard.
Okay, Section 3, debugging the social lag. Because, it's not just the hardware throwing us into the uncanny valley. Let's look at the software side to uncover a specific latency bug that massively compounds this creepy factor.
So the absolutely crucial metric we have to talk about is 200 milliseconds. In natural, everyday human conversation, the gap between turns, like the exact moment I stop speaking and you start, is incredibly brief. It's about 200 milliseconds. That is roughly the time it takes to blink your eye. And that is the exact rhythmic target our robotic friend has to hit if it wants to feel natural. But imagine the exhausting processing sequence happening behind the scenes just to say hello. To have a simple chat, the robot has to, first, understand your speech. Second, send that data to an AI to generate a text response. Third, synthesize that text back into audio. And fourth, physically coordinate those 17 facial motors to match the syllables perfectly. Every single one of these steps adds processing delay, especially if it's computing up in the cloud instead of locally. So hitting a 200 millisecond response time through all of that, it is a massive, massive engineering hurdle.
And this brings us right to the engineer's dilemma, what we can call the latency bug. The more a robot looks perfectly human, the less forgiving we are of these software delays. When a hyper-realistic silicone face just stares at you blankly for 3 whole seconds while it processes a response, boom, it shatters the illusion entirely. It amplifies that unsettling uncanny valley effect tenfold because a real human would never pause like that.
Let's pivot. Section 4. The stylized design alternative. If hyperrealism is bottlenecked by creepy silicone and conversational lag, how do we fix it? Well, we take an entirely different engineering approach.
Check out this approach from a Brooklyn-based company called Reflex Robotics. They aren't trying to make flesh bots at all. They build industrial warehouse robots with a highly stylized, distinctly non-human design. Heck, it doesn't even have a voice to talk to you. But here's the absolute genius part. It feels endearing just because it moves naturally. It can pitch forward to nod yes, roll, shake its head, or physically adjust its height to maintain direct eye contact with whoever is speaking. By focusing on fluid, human-like reactions rather than human-like skin, they've achieved this really warm connection with zero creepy vibe.
But there is a catch. The reason Reflex's robots move with such flawless human intuition isn't entirely because of AI. The cheat code they are using right now is teleoperation. Human supervisors are remotely controlling these machines, acting like highly advanced puppeteers. Every time the human operator takes over, they're essentially playing a video game, and the robot learns from that physical correction, gathering the data it needs to eventually become autonomous.
Now, what's really interesting here is the sheer scale of the data problem we still face. UC Berkeley roboticist Ken Goldberg estimates that at our current data collection rates, using teleoperation to teach robots how to move flawlessly, it will take us another 100,000 years of collecting data before robots reach the level of physical sophistication and autonomy that we actually want. 100,000 years. Teleoperation is a great training wheels phase for sure, but it's a massive bottleneck. Finally, Section 5, the future of social bots. Let's evaluate where all this engineering actually leaves us. Are we truly ready to bring robot companions out of the factories and into our living rooms?
Well, if we have to rely on teleoperation to make robots move naturally, we run straight into a massive privacy roadblock. It's perfectly summarized by this quote: "I wouldn't want a remote supervisor seeing my girlfriend in her underwear." Honestly, fair point. If a human operator needs to remote into your robot to help it navigate a messy bedroom or a complex social interaction, you are essentially inviting a random stranger into your private life. For an industrial warehouse floor, that's fine. But for a home companion, absolutely a non-starter.
So, as engineers, we are looking at 2 very distinct paths for the immediate future. On one side, the hyper-realistic approach. It's incredibly complex, wildly expensive, and constantly struggling to climb out of the uncanny valley. On the other side, we have adorably stylized robots. A really great example is a French bot called Miroy by Enchanted Tools. Because they fully embraced a cute, stylized design, they completely bypassed the creepy factor and have actually been deployed into nursing homes as companion bots for the elderly. They aren't promising perfect human emulation. They just promise helpful, endearing interaction.
Which brings us to the final critical question for you, the engineer. As we continue this race to cure loneliness with synthetic companionship, what should our priority be? Do we keep fighting the uncanny valley, pouring millions into making machines look exactly like us? Or do we accept that true connection doesn't require a human face at all and focus entirely on making them act and respond with human empathy? It's a fascinating design problem, and one we will undoubtedly be debugging for decades to come. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep your curiosity sharp.